Okay guys, yay! We're going to be talking about the cortex and how anxiety is related with the cortex, what the cortex's role is with anxiety. So the cortex is the curvy part, the pink part of the brain that everybody refers to as the actual brain. The cortex processes sensory information like what we see, hear, smell, taste, and touch. The amygdala can't process information. The amygdala gets the raw information, raw version of the data, whereas the cortex actually processes this information that's coming from our five senses like our eyes, ears, nose, mouth, and touch, which goes to the thalamus first and then to the cortex, and then it processes it. Then it gets sent to the amygdala. The way people can get anxiety from the cortex is not necessarily through pairing or association. It's irrational thinking like constant negative thinking or constant worry, which creates a negative feedback loop. These belief patterns reinforce the cortex, and the stronger that our belief is associated with a particular situation, the more it'll get reinforced. Once I began to use exposure therapy to reduce the pairings and associations that were triggering my amygdala, my anxiety started to recede or become smaller. I still had instances where I thought I was gonna get the anxiety from a particular experience, but it didn't necessarily happen. I felt that the cortex was still processing information irrationally, while the amygdala was already repairing itself. All I needed was a few more weeks of mindfulness meditation to get the cortex to think rationally again. I don't think it's that difficult to begin thinking positively. One of the key components to allow the cortex to process the information it receives in a positive way is to be mindful. Start meditating. And start exercising. Go for a run, start jump roping. You got to eat healthy as well to get everything working properly. These four things will enhance the already existing positive neural connections as well as create new neural connections that'll bring more peace and joy to everyday living rather than being stuck in a negative cycle of thoughts all the time, this negative feedback loop. This is what we mean when we say neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity allows your brain to work towards current environment that it's in. If you always bring negative thoughts, patterns, beliefs, and behaviors to the brain, it will develop in that particular way. If you are always bringing positive emotions, experiences, and feelings to your brain, then it will develop accordingly. Things like anticipation, criticism, rejection, fights, arguments can also cause a lot of irrational thinking and result in getting stuck in the negative patterns again, which can cause a lot of anxiety. Rational thinking, reasoning, and logic, as well as real facts, can strengthen the cortex, but it's difficult to think rationally and use reasoning when we are so used to the negatives, especially if we use substances. Speaking of substances, let's use alcohol as an example. If you use alcohol, let's say to get by regularly, it's not only weakening the chances of exposure therapy to work, but it's also creating a gray area between rational and irrational thinking in the brain. And over time, it gets worse and worse until you can figure out a way to get out of it. Regularly, drinking will prevent you from knowing whether a trigger is actually dangerous or not, even if it's safe 99% of the time, or even if it's safe for 99% of the world. This is what happened to me when I started drinking a lot. When I would stop drinking, after let's say like a binge, I sometimes could not tell if a positive thought was causing anxiety or not. The simplest things that are usually positive, like the smell of, let's say, lavender, or eating a healthy snack, or drinking chamomile tea, all of which are supposed to help relieve your anxiety, would cause me to panic because the rational and irrational boundaries were becoming like a Venn diagram, and they were basically not there anymore. There were no more boundaries. It was driving me ridiculously crazy because things that are deemed completely safe would cause a full-blown panic attack and hyperventilation for me. It was such a tough time that I went through that I would not want to go through that again. And I wouldn't want anybody else to go through that. Could you imagine having such bad anxiety that even natural anti-anxiety techniques don't work, let alone anxiety medication? I had such a rough experience with my anxiety that I would sometimes think, if this is how life is going to be, I don't want to live. This is just really, really difficult. I wasn't suicidal or anything, but I was getting really frustrated with this lifestyle, the constant hyperventilation, air hunger, and anxiety. Luckily, I found a solution. And I have to say, for you, it will take some time, but there's always light at the end of the tunnel. If you just believe there's a way to heal, it's all about the belief. You just have to believe it and follow your belief. Cognitive interventions can also have an immediate effect. Cognitive interventions are techniques and therapy practiced in counseling that disrupt the patterns the brain is used to falling into. It helps people get out of psychological difficulties like those negative feedback loops I was talking about. Through the activation and analysis of thoughts, experiences, memories, and senses, therapists draw attention to what is going on in the client's mind. This helps therapists and patients work together to find the solution that will be effective and permanent. It helps disintegrate certain belief patterns and create more positively structured beliefs. Soldiers suffering from post-traumatic stress sometimes feel irritable, jumpy, nervous, and unable to relax or rest. They sometimes can't distinguish a friend from an enemy and get startled from things that wouldn't normally startle someone. Like, for example, a doorbell ringing or a car alarm going off, or even a spoon tapping against a ceramic bowl. These things would drive them nuts. They are stuck in the fight or flight mode because of their emotions and underlying belief patterns. Because they're constantly living in this fight or flight mode, which may have been useful in survival situations, it gets extremely difficult living day to day when faced with high levels of stress and anxiety at home. Their minds have removed the boundaries between being in a war zone and being safe at home. Cognitive intervention can help reverse engineer this issue and get themselves to think more rationally, as well as have better belief patterns. They can develop a tool set they can use to deal with traumatic memories or stressful images that arise in their mind. When they practice this repeatedly, new neural connections are formed and the positivity gets stronger and stronger. Memory can be trained through visualization. They simply have to change the way they think about problematic thoughts and exercise the mind to work in different ways. Along with cognitive intervention, mindfulness is extremely important to train the brain to think rationally. A lot of us who have anxiety think very irrationally. Somewhere along the line, we've gotten stuck in a negative spider web of thoughts, and our mind just seems to want to default to that state automatically. This is why we have to be mindful. When we notice ourselves getting trapped in that web, we should have the strength to immediately take ourselves out of the web. This is why it is important to be mindful. You are basically witnessing yourself like a third person, helping steer your life instead of being on autopilot. Meditation helps a lot with this as well. When we meditate and focus our breath or a mantra, after a minute or so, our mind will start wandering again. That's completely normal. It happens to even monks, though not as much as a beginner of meditation. It's our duty to be mindful of this while meditating so that we can bring our minds back into focus. When our mind is wandering, we bring it back into focus. When it's wandering, we bring it back into focus. When we do this time and time again for a few minutes each day, over the course of a few weeks, we'll start to notice a very big difference in how we can get the cortex to start thinking rationally rather than irrationally. The more we practice, the easier it'll be to get out of the negative rut and start thinking logically and rationally. This will help the cortex get out of those nasty thoughts that drive anxiety and help get into a state of calm and worry-free living. This will also help bring positivity to the information coming from our five senses into the cortex to be processed, and it'll result in less worry, less anxiety over a period of time because we're being logical rather than irrational. It's really important to practice thoughts and interpretations you want to strengthen. It may be difficult to remind yourself to change your thought process from negative to positive, but over time, it becomes second nature. It's kind of like training the muscles in your body. If, let's say, you're overweight or underweight, you want to get to a certain goal for your body. It takes consistent practice, and if you're consistent, you'll reach your goal over a period of a few weeks to a few months. This is the same thing that happens with meditation and being mindful. It's not an overnight cure, but you have to trust the process, and after a few weeks to a few months, you will get significant results. Our brain goes by the philosophy, neurons that fire together, wire together. It's the survival of the busiest part of the brain that's going to flourish the most. The more weight we put on certain emotions, the more feedback we get for those emotions, and the stronger that part of the brain gets. The more weight we put on relaxing our minds and focusing on positive thoughts rather than negative thoughts, the more that part of the brain gets stronger. Focusing on positive thoughts, images, feelings, situations is crucial to strengthen the cortex and rational thinking process. When we get cognitive behavioral therapy, a therapist will focus on strengthening our rational, logical thought process by giving us exercises for the cortex. These exercises are like homework. They talk to us about situations and experiences and try to dig down to the root of what caused it in the first place. Then when some facts are figured out, they work together with the client to rectify that thought process and align it in a more logical way. It's not the situation or event that's the problem. The situation or event may have caused you to get stuck in this negative feedback loop in your mind, but there are ways out. It's the constant thinking of these negative situations that causes us to form triggers in our mind. That's where the problem lies. We need to break out of these worry loops, otherwise it'll constantly signal the amygdala that fear is lurking, thereby causing anxiety. We need to break these patterns. Mark Twain once said, "I've lived through some terrible things in my life, some of which actually happened." Wow, think about that for a second. That is really deep. The mind is the reason for many of our terrible experiences, not the experiences themselves. After the experience is over, it's the damn replay button that we keep pressing that messes things up. We have to learn to record over these events with better experiences. The mind is very strong. Don't let your mind control you. You have to be in control of your mind. That means things like addictions, emotions, feelings, negative thoughts, laziness, and low self-esteem, as well as unhappiness. All of these things are in your hands to overcome. Your mind will keep telling you that you're not worth it because it is designed to do that in habitual patterns. It's designed that way because it got us out of these problems in prehistoric times, thousands of years ago. It got us out of these dangerous situations thousands of years ago. We needed the fight or flight to give us energy to run away or fight back. But today, there's way too much negative stimulation from things that aren't even dangerous. A lot of these things are causing cortisol spikes more and more frequently in our brain, and it's hard for us to get control over this, steer this ship again. You have to be stronger than that. You have to train your mind to stay balanced, calm, relaxed, and emotionally intelligent. Uncertainty can be a scary thing for people with anxiety, but can also be really fun. Like, imagine a surprise birthday party. Uncertainty used to be something that I personally loved. I used to love being spontaneous and letting the universe figure things out for me as life progressed. Then when I started getting a lot of anxiety, I started building this fear. I started letting go of spontaneity because I was anticipating danger in every situation. But now that the anxiety has diminished, I'm open to uncertainty again. I just tell myself that as long as I'm doing everything right, being honest, being understanding the truth, being loyal, treating my body and mind with love and care, treating others like I'd like to be treated, as long as I'm doing all of these positive things, what can possibly go wrong, right? And even if something does go wrong, it's a part of life. It's something that I would accept and move on. We need to learn to adjust as time progresses forward. We basically need to keep the cortex focused in something positive and engaging. When we use distractions as a positive tool, it can actually help us. It simply takes some time for our brains to heal from trauma and anxiety. If we distract ourselves and focus on engaging activities to keep ourselves busy and motivated, over time, the anxiety will start to diminish. But don't get distractions mixed up with avoidance. We don't want to avoid certain situations that cause anxiety either. Those situations can be useful for exposure therapy. Distractions won't work if we think the thought itself is dangerous. If it will only work if we know that the thought is not dangerous. This takes a bit of training, but once you get it, it's smooth sailing from there. If you're mindful every minute of the day, you can just allow the anxiety to happen rather than fight it. Over time, the amygdala and cortex will understand that this thing that caused anxiety before is not really causing anxiety anymore, so it must be safe. And over time, the brain starts getting rewired. Neuroplasticity happens, and it gets overwritten. So try not to worry. When we worry, it's not the situation that's the problem. It's the actual worrying that causes the brain to experience anxiety and cause cortisol releases in the body. Worrying is useful if it helps lead to a strategic plan that has a resolution. This is why so much technology and advancement has occurred on this planet. It pretty much came from worrying, then a plan, and then a result. But constant worry without a plan will lead to anxiety. So here's my suggestion. Create a strategic plan that will get you out of this negative feedback loop in your mind. Be mindful every single minute of the day. Cut down, or better yet, quit coffee and alcohol. If you can't quit, you got to cut down on that stuff. Meditate at least 30 minutes a day. Make a journal of your anxiety experiences and write them down daily. Be mindful of what you experience. Compare it to those anxious times that you've had the same situation. Do not fight the anxiety. Let it be and go with the flow. Ride the anxiety. Also, find a therapist, practice some cognitive behavioral therapy, and tell them that you'd like to dig deep on why you're feeling these anxiety symptoms. You really want to get to the root of it. Then ask them if they can help you with cognitive interventions or cognitive restructuring. They'll know exactly what you're talking about, and they'll try their best to help you figure it out. So don't overthink it. Make sure you get some exercise and eat a healthy, well-balanced diet on a daily basis. Throw in a cheat meal here and there. If you follow these things, you'll be on your healing path and you'll kick anxiety to the curb. So good luck. Good luck. I'll see you soon. Thank you very much. Wait, don't leave yet. If you like this video and you think that it helped you, or you think that it's going to help somebody else, please share this video. It's crucial, it's important. Please, please, please subscribe. It'll help the YouTube algorithm. Leave a comment if you have any questions. I'll respond to every single comment. Like the video, and please let me know if you have any questions. I'll definitely respond to you. Thank you so much for listening to this piece on the cortex and how anxiety and the cortex works. I really appreciate it, and I'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much. Take care. Oh, and hit the bell notification icon if you want more notifications on videos like this. Thank you. Take care, and good luck with healing your anxiety. I know you can do it. By the way, check out this video on this top corner right here, or this top corner, on more information about anxiety and how it works in the brain. There's all kinds of videos that I'm creating on how anxiety is working in the brain. All right, take care and peace.